When the Q took over a planet that was inhabited by star people, their main objective was to change the locals on a genetic level. This was something they easily managed, and what resulted was a myriad of bizarre forms. They did this because they were offended by the star people's terraforming activities, and also because they considered themselves to be the only ones worthy of changing worlds. This was work to be undertaken by gods, and not these lowly infidels. The Q didn't just have one redesign in mind, however, when it came to genetically modifying their prisoners. In this video, we'll be taking a look at some of the Q's initial creations, the first 5 post-human species that we meet in the book, and trying to figure out why exactly they made the specific changes that they made, and why the redesigns between these new species vary so greatly. There must have been specific reasons for these particular modifications being decided on, and we'll now be putting ourselves into the mindset of the Q to try and figure out what those reasons might be. While the book sometimes gives us a few small tidbits of information about a particular planet a species lives on, it's usually left pretty obscure, and so a few of the settings I've come up with are my own inventions, so please bear this in mind. Anyway, let's get started with the worms. The worms planet is said to be an absolute scorcher, a baking hot desert world where life can only survive underground. It's stated in the book that through Q intervention, the heat was turned up considerably. What if this world was already rather hot when the Q arrived? They may have increased its overall temperature artificially using their unimaginable technology, but before they arrived it was a world comparable in climate to the desert states of the USA or the Gobi Desert. When the Q arrived, they noticed that the star people had terraformed it to a degree, but would spend their time living inside of cities contained within gigantic cooling bubbles, which housed a more pleasant artificial climate and made for a much more comfortable existence for the world's citizens. The Q may have been amused when they saw this. It was not just the star people's comparatively primitive technology that the Q found laughable, but also that they had chosen to colonize a world that they could not comfortably live on. Well, we'll soon fix that, they thought. If you're going to live on a desert world, we'll make it so that you can actually live on it. And so, once the Q had swiftly invaded and taken over the planet, they would modify these star people into the worms. Now they really could inhabit the desert world that they had chosen to live on, and they could do it properly. Secondly, we have the Titans. When the Q arrived on this planet, which would soon become home to the Titans, they saw that the star people of this world were quite fond of large structures, with towering skyscrapers up to 5 miles high being a common sight on this world. It was a cultural thing. The planet was also littered with mile-high statues of notable people from their past, brilliant individuals from history who had propelled them into the golden age that they were currently experiencing, but was soon to come to an abrupt end. The Q saw these megastructures and thought these beings wished themselves bigger. Why would they build these grotesquely gigantic buildings when they could comfortably fit inside of a dwelling the size of a prison cell? Well, if they wish to be Titans, we'll grant them their wish. And so, upon capture, the people of this world were made into the enormous creatures named the Titans that we meet in the book, but not before their beloved skyscrapers and incredible feats of architecture were easily toppled by the Q before their very eyes, and replaced by the miles-high pyramids that the Q were so fond of leaving on their conquered worlds. The Q needed to show these beings what true megastructures were, and they did just this, before permanently genetically modifying them into titanic 30-meter-long behemoths. Third, we have the predators and the prey. By looking through the genes of the star people of this world, the Q were able to map with 100% accuracy the entire history of human evolution, from its beginnings as a single-celled organism to its current form as a spacefaring human being. Such was the extent of the Q's technology. They could see it all. One particular period took the Q's fancy while perusing the library that was the Homo sapiens' genetic makeup, and that was what we call the Paleolithic period. Human beings lived in caves and were hunter-gatherers. What an intriguing prospect, thought the Q. They were savages back then, but when we found them, they were savages who cloaked their primitive society in a veil of civilization. Animals who had somehow gotten the idea that they were more than that. They shouldn't lie to themselves, they shouldn't delude themselves, thought the Q. And so with this in mind, the Q decided to make these people's outside appearance match their true essence, primitive beasts. And so these people were given exaggerated animal features, with some becoming predators and others becoming prey. You should thank us, thought the Q. We have allowed you to become become your true selves. Next up is the mantelopes. The mantelopes were bred as singers and memory retainers. They acted as living hard drives during the queue's reign. Their fate was a particularly cruel one, as they were basically reduced to the level of lesser evolved animals physically, yet still retained the minds of human beings. When the queue arrived on this world, they discovered this particular star people culture to be one of practicality and free expression, a society where individualism was of high importance. On other worlds, this was of course accepted, as the star people knew that allowing each individual to do things their own way was paramount to continued development, but here on this world it was of the highest priority. It was integral to their cultural identity. These were people who, above all, liked to get things done, and in their own way. The queue, knowing this to be cherished above all else, decided to take it away from them. They could sing, but only for the queue. They would be living memory banks of incredible knowledge, but only of knowledge which the queue deemed important. When the queue left, the mantelopes were lost. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't fix their world, which they so sorely wished to do, but their animal bodies wouldn't allow it. Yet they could still express themselves, something they loved to do in their past lives as star people, but now all they could express was sorrow and misery. Luckily for them, their animal form would eventually overshadow their human minds, which would in time grow dull, and then their sapience would be forever lost. Finally, we have the swimmers. It's stated in the book that the swimmers' creation was likely due to the queue having an aquatic larval stage in their early development, but this may not be the only reason. It could be that this planet was a water world of sorts, perhaps with even less landmass than Earth, and almost completely covered in ocean. Much like the worms on that baking hot desert planet, it could be that the queue were puzzled, or amused, by the fact that these people had chosen to live on a planet that was generally unsuitable to their lifestyle. With this being an ocean planet, perhaps with some artificially created land that was terraformed by the star people, the queue decided that they would force the inhabitants to live within the planet's defining feature, and so the swimmers were created. Now, these were just some theories on why the queue decided to make these particular changes to these particular star people, and these were only the first 5 or 6 species from the book as well. Pretty soon I'll make more videos on the other species and why I think they ended up the way that they did. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then please subscribe and hit the like button as well. Doing so really helps out the channel and allows it to be found by more people. Also, don't forget to check out the merch store, link in description. This has been Beware the Queue, and I'll see you in the next video.